Hey, deserving listeners. Today we are going to talk about the movies of 2024 that I have seen and that Collin Miller has seen. This is a special guest episode with Collin Miller. We call these episodes Calling In with Collin. And welcome back to the podcast, Collin.
Hello there. Always a pleasure to spend time with you, my liege.
So I thought we would start with our number 2 most favorite movie and also with our most controversial take. Collin, what is your number 2, not your number 1, but your number 2 movie for 2024?
It's a very successful film. It's one of the ones that most people can agree, even if it's not your flavor, it's delicious. It's The Substance. Did you see The Substance?
I haven't. I've yet to. Stacy from the preview refuses to see it. She hates gore, and apparently it's like really gory. So I, as a consequence, have not seen it. But we should tell people that the Oscars are this weekend for us. It's Tuesday of the Oscars week. This episode will air after the Oscars. So we always want to watch every Oscar movie and also Best Actor, Best Actress movies as well. So Substance is definitely on the list, but I have yet to see it. So that's your number 2.
Dose.
Okay. And what did you like about The Substance?
Well, it's very Cronenberg-esque. Cronenberg's one of my favorite directors. I enjoy...
Is it by Cronenberg?
No.
Right.
Right, but it just feels... It doesn't feel derivative. It feels exemplary. And also an expansion in certain ways, because I'd never seen anything by Cronenberg that tackled the female body in a way that this movie does. Because one of my favorite movies of all time is The Fly. However, it's about... I mean, I would say that is Gina Davis's story and movie, but the person that all the things are happening to, even though we receive it through her perspective, is Jeff Goldblum. And you're sort of seeing The Fly in reverse, because The Fly is something unexpected that happened to somebody who was caught off guard by excessive science that didn't deserve what they got. And Demi Moore's character doesn't deserve what she gets either, but she willingly partakes in a series of bad scientific, biological decisions that then slowly degrade her over time. And I think I'm going to leave it at that, because it's really worth seeing and not knowing how things work. And that's another thing I liked as well. It managed to do what a lot of science fiction horror films often do not, which is be specific and present you with science that you can ascertain, take in, appreciate. And also not being so specific where you're just thinking about the rules of how all this is supposed to work for 2 hours, which can be annoying. It found that happy medium where I was totally transported. And I saw this with one of my closest trans friends, Chaselyn, and she had a really powerful reaction to the film. And I think that it makes sense on another level that we should really have our eye on this film, because no matter how you identify, losing control over your body in this way is one of the most terrifying things that can happen to anybody. And she's had to go through certain surgeries and procedures to achieve the happiness that she's wanted for her life. And she really identified with the character. Also tangentially, because she does drag, she was thinking about standards of beauty. And this film has a ton to say about that. And as I've grown more and more jaded by the beauty standard and how filters and AI and all of these things are making it more and more unrealistic to be quote-unquote beautiful, I also think that the film kind of tackles that in a really brave way. It's very good.
Well, as usual, Collin, brilliant, entertaining review. My number 2 is, and I'm having a hard time choosing between 1 and 2, but I'm going to choose my number 2 as Anora, which is not a happy choice, because I was almost going to put Anora number 1, but I feel like there's another number 1 that is maybe more long lasting to me that I'll get into at the very end of this episode. We'll reveal our number one. But my number two is Honora. I loved that movie. It sounds like you did too.
Love
and
it.
I loved it on so many levels. On one, it's kind of like a movie in, I guess you could say, 3 acts, but maybe 2 main parts. The first part is the rise. The second part is the fall. And it happens very abruptly. The fall begins very quickly. The rise is very entertaining and interesting and real. And it's just like his other movies that he's made. Sean, I'm going to look up on IMDb, Sean Baker. And, shout out to Mikey Madison. The entire movie is on her shoulders, similar to Sean Baker's last Oscar-nominated movie, Florida Project, also with a non-actress playing the lead role. I don't know if Mikey Madison is in other things. I'm actually going to look her up. But, okay, she's been in other things. She's just not a known quantity. Have you ever seen her before? That actress?
No, I admire her so much, though. She was so passionate about this project, and she seems like a movie star in the way that you're watching somebody on screen that appears to have perfected their craft, explored their presence on screen, is comfortable being to that level of vulnerability that a real good movie star has to go to in order for us to really feel like we know them. I don't know what she's done before, but the fact that she got there, having me having no idea, because I watch a lot of movies, having no idea who she is, I could not have been more impressed with her performance.
Yeah, I get chills thinking about her performance, and it's so real. And it has to do with Sean Baker, particularly because that's his style of movie. Is, there's always movies where it feels very real, but Sean Baker with Florida Project and Honora and other movies that he's done, it really takes the realness to another level. And also, how do you make movies that are real and also realistic and also entertaining? And this movie really gets it. Florida Project, I loved. I really loved that movie, but it didn't really have a plot. This movie has a plot. There's a storyline. There's tension, suspense. And yet, it just feels so real. And it gets into things that are happening within our country, stories that are happening on a daily basis that are never portrayed, right? And I am surprised that she is a professional actress and has been at it, because I would have put money that they found a stripper in a strip club and said, "Have you ever thought about acting?" Because her performance as a stripper and just all the little movements of someone in that world as she goes home, as she talks to people in the green room at the strip club, just all these little ways that if you plucked someone out of Juilliard to play this role. Is Juilliard also a actress place as well? I know it's a music place, but you know what I'm saying. If you pluck someone out of the training schools of acting, I would imagine that person culturally would be so far away from the strip club, working class and struggling class culture that they wouldn't be able to pull this off. Her performance was so good. I'm so impressed that she's an actual actress. So not only that, but the thing that really, so it's very entertaining, and the whole movie, and I think it was maybe 2 hours long or something, I am on the edge of my seat. Even when the first half of the movie and it's all hunky-dory and everything's going well, I'm just like, there's risks here, and risks on several levels. There's risks of violence, but there's also risk of heartbreak. There's risk of misunderstanding. There's risks all over the place. And then the second half is kind of like a Sopranos episode where you just never know, like, is someone going to get popped, and the characters and even the bad guys you start to empathize with. But the kicker for me, and I won't spoil it, but the ending of the movie, there's this scene between the lead actress, played by Mikey Madison, and the other guy. I think his name is it Yura, or is it Paul Weissman? Is that who it is? Anyway, the guy who plays, I think he's, anyway, or no, is it Igor? Anyway, point is that the guy, they're in the car, and he and her are about to say goodbye, and they have this wrap-up little scene, and any other writer-director would write it in a cheesy-ass way, or they would avoid the whole thing and just have them look at each other as they say goodbye. There is a final coda to their relationship that is so real. She reminded me of so many clients that I used to work with, people that had put up walls upon walls upon walls when they're because of not only their childhood, but as an adult, everyone wants something from them. And she is an attractive woman, and so there's a good chance that literally everyone that interacts with her is trying to get something out of her, sexually or money or something. And she, in the beginning of the movie, functions well. She's in that world, she's okay. Things aren't perfect, but there's no volatility. But then she opens up her heart. And we don't know what she opens her heart to. We don't know, is she opening her heart the way we would relate to romance and love? And or is she opening her heart to money and security and riches and fame? We can't really tell. And that's the beauty of this movie, is that I think for a lot of people, they would assume she was opening her heart to... Well, what do you think? Do you think she was opening her heart to either or both?
I think that she was allowing herself to be vulnerable in a moment that was...
Like emotionally, romantically vulnerable?
Vulnerable to human compassion. Because what I saw from the beginning of the movie was a very strong person, but not just a strong person, but a person who had restricted certain behaviors because she had been hurt before. And you get a sense of her putting up this defense. She's a fighter. She's constantly... I watched it with my mom, and she said at the end, she went, wow, I am so enamored with how strong that character had to be. And yet, what's beautiful about the ending is that she finds a way to be strong in a different way, which is to receive the truth of somebody's compassion. And I think that was a very rare thing, because I don't think she's always been able to trust it. But we see her find a little bit of relief, a little bit of reprieve from being used for somebody else's purposes and doing not what they want, but finding a way to seek her own comfort with someone and have a dialogue, an actual dialogue, not where she's fighting for something, not where she's trying to make somebody like her, not where she has some reason to be manipulative or to be fearful of manipulation. It's just humans connecting with other humans. And I thought that was exquisitely done.
Yeah. That turn and the tension building up to it. If people haven't seen the movie, I don't think it's a spoiler to say at the very, very end, there's this guy who has been generally nice to her overall, and at the very end has this final gesture of niceness that is just pure generosity and niceness without trying to get anything out of her. And I just thought it was so interesting leading up to the end how she was being a dick, just a straight up dick to him and for no reason. And I just thought that is a true auteur there. Someone who is willing, because the producers and the label but maybe not, because it's probably an A24, because they do everything great these days, right? That, or at least the typical Hollywood exec would say, you can't make her such an asshole. Like, she's unrelentingly an asshole to this. She's the star of the show. She's what we're cheering for. And then after things are calming down at the end, she's just a royal dick for no reason. That's when and it felt so realistic. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times as a therapist I would be working with someone like her, and I would be that guy. I guess now I'm realizing that. I was that guy. And they don't let you in. So we wouldn't have like vulnerable conversations, right? And I would just have to take the abuse and frame it as proving myself that I can be trusted. You know, I'm going to stay, and I'm in contact, and I'm not always going to react perfectly, but I'm not going to flip out, and I'm not going to take the bait. You're testing me, which I think that's what she was doing at the end, because she just comes out of the blue and starts to accuse him of things that I think were common among other interactions that she would have. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, we've crested that hill, and as they're saying goodbye, okay, now she's going to be nice. No, she's still a dick. She was a dick right up until, and then when she finally turns the corner, she's like, well, the only other mode I have between walls and dickitude is to be sexually pleasing. So she's like, okay, well, here we go. And he's just like stunned, and he's not leaning into it. And then that's when she finally is letting go of those two modes between.
And distinctly not judging her.
Yeah. Not like, you're gross, get off of me.
Yeah, like, how dare you, or you're so crazy, with so many people throughout, him included, in certain moments where she's being very, very, very aggressive. They all call her crazy. A lot of the men in the movie take turns, knocking her down a peg, and then she gets the worst of it from the guy who she's sleeping with. His parents are just complete trash and so horrible to her, and so judgmental of her, and they judge her for everything. They, to the point where they get to the place where is what I would say one of the most dangerous levels you can get with somebody, which is your entire existence is a joke to me, to the point where I laugh at your state of affairs, and in your face also. And he does the complete opposite and defends her in the only way that he can, also in that exchange, which starts the crescendo of him, even though it had started earlier. I mean, from the very beginning, the slow build of this actor who is Yuri Borisov.
Yeah, I was just going to give him a shout out.
He has this slow burn of being able to withstand her to the degree where I don't think a lot of people have, where, like, even the guy that she's supposedly in love with, he runs away. Or when people are aggressive to her, she fights back. She fights with people, and then they give back equal parts. And that's when we see that resilient fight in her that she never, ever, ever gives up. But she's always had to. And that's the real tragedy of that character, is being any other way meant that she got hurt. And so just giving her another option and not responding with the energy she gives is the ultimate blessing to her. And I was thinking about this on the drive home today from one of my appointments. I think we don't value that kind of strength enough. I think we're so focused on that overly, well, you've come at me with this bad energy, so therefore I'm going to bring it right back to you. And that's the only thing that I can do to defend myself. But there's so much bad energy coming at us, not just from the people in our lives, but, certain aspects of the government, depending on where you live. There's all these messages that are so harmful, and we're in such a toxically binary state of existence where it's black or white, Republican, Democrat, etc. And we feel like we have to fight all the time, but being with somebody and realizing you have nothing to defend is just this deeper, deeper strength that this character gets to experience. And it was a journey for him too, not just her. And that's what I think made it so beautiful, is seeing somebody struggle with something. It's not good that they're struggling, but it can also have a positive impact on what you're going through. And people who are hurting are, in my opinion, called to sort of support each other.
Yeah.
And that's where we're
Yeah. I also related to every character, including Ivan's parents, which is interesting when I think about it. They never went into Annie's background. We never got a flashback or her talking about her having a rough childhood. We knew nothing about anything that happened before this movie, which is another testament to the backbone of the auteur. Mm-hmm. And I suspected, similarly, since we didn't have a background on anyone in the movie, that everyone was coming from something like that. Like the mom, and I couldn't remember where I'd seen her before, and I still can't. And I'm trying to even just find her on IMDb, and she's like deep in the list of cast, but I swear I've seen her before. Maybe on The Sopranos, like one of the nannies or something. I don't know. But she, in her brief appearances on screen, seemed like she had seen some shit too and needed to uphold images regarding their family, regarding who her son was going to marry or not, right? And also, I understood Ivan, the son. I understood where he was coming from. He's a kid, and he is trying to find himself, and he comes to the States to like just have one last party before he has to settle down and enter the family business and all that stuff. And it's horrible, but I also think he thought that he actually wanted to be with her, but he wasn't thinking down the road. You know, I think he was living in the moment and allowing himself in a very irresponsible way, as his life probably had always given him, that he was just like, he was feeling it. You know, he really did love her in his childish way. And then when he is being confronted, he knows that he has fucked up and he has no way of getting out of it. He's too immature to say sorry or anything, but at least selfishly, he was remorseful for setting this whole thing up. And I don't know, I even understood the priest. It didn't look like he was having a good day, and he was tasked. Now, from our perspective, it's just like, hey, lighten up, like, let these two lovebirds work it out. But, you know, there are realities in life that have to be upheld, or at least are commonly valued, you know what I mean? And so I don't know. I understood everyone, and the movie, I kept waiting for some horrible thing to happen to somebody, you know, a bullet to the back of the head or something, you know, and skip forward a minute. That never happens. And I thought that was another backbone auteur thing, because it would be so tempting to have action and a gunfight or a murder. It would have been so tempting at the end of the movie just to kill her, you know, or to have Ivan and Annie run off together. So, you know, like there's so many cheesy, but they ended it in a way that just felt so perfect. Yeah, I just really, okay. So let's take a break, and when we get back, let's talk about our most controversial take. What do you say?
Sounds perfect.
All right, we're back from the break. So, Collin, what is your most controversial rating of a movie from 2024?
I ranked all the movies I could remember seeing. I think I probably left some out. But I would say it's controversial because, especially after we just stopped discussing Anora, that movie is so fantastic. And yet when I ranked all my films, this came in at number 3 and pushed Anora to number 4, which I'm losing respect for myself as I say this. My number 3 for the year of favorite movies was Sonic 3, which is insane.
Well, I haven't seen any of these Sonic movies, but I've heard that they're really good.
They're good.
But above Anora?
And that's crazy. I should not have done that. So,
I mean, it depends on what you're rating, right? If you're valuing like meaning and power, that's one thing. If you're valuing entertainment value or rewatchability or tapping into your childhood video game dreams, then that's a different vibe.
Yeah, I played Sonic Adventure 2 relentlessly when I was a younger person. And the reason I have it so high is I couldn't believe what I was seeing whilst watching the film. Because without getting into all of the nuts and bolts of the plot, which aren't important, most of the time when you accept the task of doing a Sonic movie, and you're not only going to do a Sonic movie, but you're going to base it on this obscure, to people that don't play video games only, obscure game from 2000 something, I think 2001 maybe, called Sonic Adventure 2. You're going to take that story and translate it.
Wait, are you saying it's based on a sequel to the original Sonic the Hedgehog game?
Yes, there's a...
Because the original game was in 93 or 4. I remember playing the first game on Sega Genesis. And,
yes.
And it was just a massive leap forward beyond other platformers at the time. Super Mario Brothers was dominating up until that point, and then Sonic the Hedgehog comes out. It's just like, whoa, this is so much more fast and like chaotic and fun. Yeah. So you're saying that the movies are based on like a sequel to the original Sonic the Hedgehog game?
Well, it's interesting because Sonic has a much deeper history than 2001, but there's a series of games that came out first on the Dreamcast and then later on the GameCube, and I believe since have been ported to other things, although I'm not sure, that are called the Sonic Adventure series. So it's a little bit different than just the standard Sonic runs from the left to the right and you have to collect rings as you go. The Sonic Adventure games have a story with multiple characters, and that's really where the series started to incorporate a little more depth, and you meet obscure characters like Shadow the Hedgehog or Rouge the Bat, and I guess it's such a thing that, like, even as we were talking, your immediate association with Sonic the Hedgehog are the side-scrollers, which makes sense, because I think that's what most people think of when you think of Sonic. So I'm watching this big-budget movie that's meant to be for everyone, kids and young adults, and then just adults. And they're incorporating this story, and it was mind-boggling to me that they did it, because movies that adapt video games never care, with some exceptions, and especially when it comes to television shows, like Fallout. Most of the time, they have no comprehension and or care for the source material, or if they do, like the Mario movie, they're still going to go for the obvious choices. So as a relationship to Mario as a movie, I was so enamored with this new Sonic because the Mario movie hit all the right points. You got Peach, you got Bowser, let's put the Kongs in there. People like Mario Kart. Let's make it more accessible with a couple of catchy songs because we're going to get the really young kids in on that one. Well, we have to have mushrooms. Okay, throw that in there. It was a paint-by-numbers experience, even though it was beautifully animated, whereas Sonic actually did something specific. So my mind was just kind of baffled that this specificity I cared about as a gamer was in such a mainstream format. It's kind of where
I think I've heard that it's really well made. It has a good plot. It's good for kids, but also for adults. And Jim Carrey, dials in a good performance. Okay, yeah, so that's controversial. You think that a stupid video game movie is better than Anora. Okay, fine.
I don't really, that's the thing. But I put it on there that way, so I had to honor it.
So on IMDb, I'm looking at all my ratings of things that were released in 2024. Wicked Part 1. I gave it a 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10, it means good movie, watch it. I really loved the set design. The fact that they could make it look like a movie from the 30s, but also like a movie from today at the same time was a feat of production design. The acting was great. The singing was great. I'm a little skeptical. They say that all the singing was live, and I'm trying to figure out how they managed the microphones, because the production on the singing was such that the microphone must be close to the singer, and yet when they're running around in a room, unless they digitize the microphone out, which is possible, then there's no way it could be live. So
I don't believe
those two singers are incredible singers. They are not only just stylistically great, but they are technically almost perfect singers. They have extremely excellent technique. So could they sing it live? Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind, without any auto-tuning, could they do it? Yes. I'm just a little skeptical I'm just always skeptical of live performances being claimed to be live. But yeah, the singing performances were great. The acting was great. I feel like Bowen Yang was completely underutilized. I'm like, why is he even in this movie? Have you seen Wicked Part 1?
I did. Yeah. Well, when you were just talking, what came to mind was when Michelle Phillips famously ate a banana on the Ed Sullivan Show as a protest against being forced to lip sync during their performance. That actually was a clip on Instagram that was shared with me privately in relation to Wicked once the claims came out that it was live. I don't think it has anything to do with, like you said, the performers being inadequate. It's just, it seems nearly impossible for anyone that's edited before and has done anything live, because there's so many components that are just out of your control and things are overlapping.
They're literally doing wire work.
I know.
Like flinging around in a warehouse with a green screen. How in the world are they keeping a professional grade microphone close to their face? Now, some of those headset microphones can sound pretty good, and you could digitize those out, but it just doesn't seem likely to me. And also, I don't expect them to sing live. There are times when the live singing is a good gimmick, like Les Miserables, when they were singing live. I mean, some people, of course, hated Russell Crowe's, but I don't imagine him in the vocal booth singing all that better. But other people, it makes it raw, and there's wobble in their voice, and the microphone isn't ideal, and you get that sense, and that's okay. Anyway, my hot take on Wicked was that everything about this movie was perfect except for the script. The whole story is based on a very it's a cliche, and and you can do cliches in movie plots. I'm totally for that. But it's a cliche, it's a trope that you have the ugly duckling that is being bullied and they rise up. And in today's trope, it would be that they rise up to be a villain in a later IP thing, right? So that's what we're looking at, right? The evil witch of the East? West? Which one? Where's West? And I've seen Wizard of Oz so many times, I can't believe I forgot, but we've seen that before. And it almost seemed like the way it's written, and I don't know if it's like this on Broadway or even in the book, but the story beats were not, to me, fleshed out enough. And it was almost like they intended on the audience filling in the gaps, because we've seen that trope so many times, and we want Elphaba to win because we identify with she's the one that's being mistreated. So there's this moment where Glinda, spoiler alert, but the whole thing turns on, and I think this is in the trailer, for God's sakes, but Elphaba shows up to the party, and she has that black hat on that Glinda has convinced her to wear, and it is a total bully moment. Glinda has completely humiliated an already bullied individual, an already hated individual. Glinda has completely screwed her over. She walks in, everyone's pointing and laughing. It's the Carrie moment, right? And in that moment, Glinda says, "Oh no, I did something wrong. I feel bad." And I'm thinking, why? You've been treating her at the very least neutrally, but also badly this whole time. What led up to that feeling? And I've looked on Reddit boards, and people have been debating this because there's other people that feel like me. There's other people like, I don't really understand why did Glinda make that turn? And people have laid out the story beats that lead up to it, and I can kind of see it, but it didn't make sense to me in the moment, because from that point forward, she loves Elphaba. She's treating Elphaba like crap. And then all of a sudden, Glinda loves her and is totally fine being number 2 to her, or not even relevant. It just completely turns on a dime. Now, can you have a character that transforms? Yeah, but, show the work. Show me. How did Glinda change? And I think also, as an audience, I wanted to like Glinda, even though she was treating Elphaba like crap. I like Ariana Grande. The Glinda character isn't horrible. Also, we were primed to like her because she's the good witch at the end of Wizard of Oz. So we just are primed to like her. But I was like, when I started thinking about it, I'm like, wait, this doesn't make sense. No one else in the room felt bad. Bowen Yang didn't feel bad. No one felt bad. Glinda is the only one in that moment that is like, oh, I feel bad. Now, people say, well, they were sort of bonding as roommates, and of course, Elphaba convinces the professor, the revered professor, to include her, the wand and all that stuff. And yeah, but I wished there were a couple other story beats in there that I would have been able to grab onto and said, oh, okay, it's finally reached the breaking point for Glinda, and now she just has to say, oh my God, I'm the bully, or something like that. And it just felt empty. And then the other part that I was also questioning was the whole storyline of Wizard of Oz, the Wizard of Oz. His whole power, his whole shtick is that he never shows his real face. He only shows this monstrosity, the mechanics that makes him look like a magical, but he's not magical. He's just a guy from Earth that landed in the land of Oz. And at the end of Wizard of Oz, the original movie with Judy Garland, everyone knows Toto pulls the curtain back, and there's, spoiler alert for a movie that's 100 years old, and the wizard is revealed. And it's a novel concept to the people of Oz, to the lion and, the scarecrow. They're like, oh my God, he's not a real wizard. It's just a regular guy pulling a bunch of levers. Elphaba and Glinda go in to meet with the Wizard of Oz, and when he finds out it's Elphaba, which I'm guessing is his daughter, but he doesn't know it. I haven't seen the rest of the movie, so I don't know. And he just comes out from underneath. He just throws the curtain back. Yeah, this whole thing is so. I'm like, did you not watch the original movie? He doesn't come out from behind the curtain. That's his whole thing. Why did you do that? At the very least, if they wanted Jeff Goldblum to come out, he could have said, I'm sending my assistant out. Listen to him. Like, there's so many other ways, but it's like this. It's like the Rings of Power TV show. It's like they remember having watched the movie, and then they just write a script based on, without thinking about the world. Because now Glinda and Elphaba, I mean, especially Glinda, can turn around, walk out, and say, by the way, the wizard's just a regular guy. Then it's over. And then there's no Wizard of Oz. Because you wouldn't go to just a regular guy behind a curtain. Anyway, now, I ran this past my wife afterwards, and she just kind of stared at me. and because she loved the movie, which I understand. And again, this is my hot take, and I'm guessing there's a lot of people listening that are already throwing their phones or whatever. But Collin, you've been listening to me with a fairly straight face, so I don't know if you hate me, or you're neutral, or you can relate. So Collin, if I'm stupid, please speak for the audience and set me straight.
I could never hate you. That's impossible. The movie, however, was good. I think part of the discourse is that it is flawed. And I think that what's fascinating to me, I mentioned binary world causing problems. sometimes I think in reviews we're too polarized. I think that sometimes we hyperbolize our own reviews to get clicks or to, find company. If we're not doing it for any kind of forum or post or podcast, even if we're just talking to somebody, we might elevate or diminish our stance a little bit so that we can be aligned because we want that companionship. However, when you and I watch things, I think we're aligned in that we can talk about the flaws along with the stuff that we like. And it doesn't mean that we hate the movie. It doesn't mean that we hate every aspect of it, because we absolutely didn't. I had similar issues with the film because everything seemed to be set up, and I'm not even that precious about The Wizard of Oz, because when I was growing up, my childhood was filled with Disney Renaissance films, and by extension, the older ones. That's where I found magic. It wasn't The Wizard of Oz.
Whenever Wizard of Oz was on TV, and it was on, because this is before cable and HBO and before VHS, there was, I think, this Sunday night movie thing, and Wizard of Oz was on TV at least once a year, and my mom would always get everyone to watch it.
Aww.
And so maybe once a year we would watch it. So yeah, it's a big deal to me.
Right, and even if it wasn't, even if you were on my stance, I think people who just enjoy film want characters to feel like they are active. And I found that Elphaba, whilst being portrayed by a terrific singer and actress, I'd seen Cynthia Erivo in Bad Times at El Royale, and I went, ooh, I've got to watch her. She's someone to watch. Saw her in Widows subsequently, and I think she's phenomenal.
Well, she was also in that biopic.
Yeah, it was, are you talking about... You're not talking about The Color Purple.
No.
The musical version, because that was...
Golly, I should look it up, but I'll look it up while you're talking.
But the crux of it is I think we like active protagonists, and everything sort of felt like it was set up because Elphaba had to get to a certain point. Well, we need her to understand that the wizard is a fraud. So we're going to just...
Harriet Tubman.
Oh! Of course, yeah, where she has a gun. She's a freaking gunslinger. I went musical in a completely different direction. But anyway, she has to get that information because the story demands that she gets that information. She has to be attracted to Fiyero, and they have to have chemistry. They have to have a romance because that's what has to happen.
Yeah, the whole thing with the prince, I was like, why is he even in this story? He's such a distraction. I was
agree.
like, I guess you need a love interest in a I don't know, a crowd pleaser, but I just found his character to be so just confusing. I didn't know what he wanted. And
He's fluff.
And we have a long history in Hollywood of creating fluff characters that are women who are just like there as objects. And he fills that in the male sense, in the heterosexual sense. But every time he was on screen, and maybe this is by design, and maybe it's, a genius move. It didn't work on me. But every time he was on screen, I'm like, wait, what does he want? I don't know what he wants. He's with Glinda, and we're supposed to be rooting for Glinda, right? She's a likable character, especially towards the end of the movie.
I didn't think so.
But secretly he likes Elphaba. Then what's wrong with him? Why isn't he with Elphaba? And does Elphaba like him? And why does Elphaba like him? He seems like the opposite sort of dude that she would be into. And I don't know, like it exactly. Just all of those. And I feel like I've been saying, I'll say this again, and I'm sorry, but I feel like the writers and the writer was depending on all of us having seen 100 movies with the similar story beats, and we just figure those story beats are in there because it has the look of a story like that, and so we just forego those story beats even though they're not there. You know what I mean?
I love that you said that because I'm insane. I must take it back to Sonic. So that was really why it worked for me, because I already could have been there. You play a certain song that comes on when you're fighting the final boss. Probably my nostalgia is going to be activated. That's a given. But what they did, and I felt them working on me, even though it was going through me and hitting the people to my left and my right, I went, oh my gosh, they're inviting me. They're inviting people as an audience that don't have these associations, that have no idea why this game matters. They're inviting us to invest. And that's what I was so thrilled to see critics talking about this Sonic 3 having no idea why it's not complete crap. Just still maybe it's not for them. You know, Fish Jelly reviewed it and they were like, yeah, I mean, I don't really care about Sonic, but I have to admit it wasn't complete shit. And so, yeah, when a filmmaker does that extra work, I think it just makes the audience feel cared for. I mean, we don't like to talk to people who talk at us or use us as vessels for whatever their designs are. We want to engage, and a film should do that as well. And while there are individually great sequences in Wicked that if you put them on YouTube as a scene out of context, I like the Fierro song. Not just because I'm attracted to Jonathan Bailey to the nth degree, but also because I think it's fun. As a theater nerd, I'm going, oh, they're using the extras. Like when you sit down in the house and you go, ooh, that's that guy that was in the scene earlier. That person that I'm like, oh, that's exciting. I don't know who that is, but just the fact that the extras are involved and the choreography and
yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you said that because that's exactly how I felt about the final scene of part 1. Answer me that. And I asked Stacy this, and I tried to find this online, but there's someone that is trying to make the animals caged and not intelligent, or they can't speak. The powers that be in the land of Oz, which is the Wizard of Oz? Is he the dictator? Do you know the answer to this question?
It's fascinating because I have seen the play live once. I saw it years ago. I was a junior in high school, and because I was in England, I was really excited that I could have wine. And so I was completely drunk. So my perception of it is just that night that's a blur, and then also hearing songs on the soundtrack throughout the years when I'm like, oh, I just need to hear that Idina Menzel, vocal again. But my understanding is that that's not in the play, really. It may be in the book. I haven't read the book. I don't remember a single thing about a talking animal at all in the play. I could be completely wrong.
But after watching part 1, do you know anything? Like, is
the wizard, right? Because he says, well, they need a threat, and so we're going to give them a threat so we can all be aligned under the threat of the animals. Now I'm saying it. I don't think that makes sense because they're not a threat. They're just animals. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay. And he was trying to galvanize everybody. Why? Was there chaos in the streets?
You're right. Oh my gosh, there's no threat really that you could see people or governments.
Like if they were having a civil war prior,
right?
Then okay.
Rude observation.
But also, like, if the wizard is doing that, then he is he is a monster.
Yeah, I didn't like that they made him complete shit.
He is one of the most monstrous characters we've ever seen in film. I mean, that is horrific.
I know.
To essentially mutilate the minds of sentient creatures. And again, I'm just dumb and I wasn't paying close enough attention. I don't know.
No, because you wouldn't care about this if also the relationships. It is an issue with the movie because think about, were you rooting for any of the relationships? Even if you didn't care about the plot, like which one were you rooting for?
I guess the Glinda Elphaba friendship I was rooting for, and I don't know why, given that Glinda was a pretty big jerk in the beginning, especially like tricking her to wear this hat. And the whole thing about the hat, let me talk about the hat. So it's this foregone conclusion that Elphaba looks ridiculous in that outfit. Just look around at that party. Everyone is wearing pretty outlandish clothing. And if anything, Elphaba just looked like monochrome. Like she was the only one just wearing one color. But if everyone was wearing tuxedos and like ball gowns, maybe. But if you look around the room, it's an interesting fashion world. And so I also didn't really understand why it was so stupid that she was wearing this hat. What was so humiliating about it?
That's context that we needed as an audience, and you could have had scenes where the hat meant something.
Right.
You know, it was a reference to a time when magic was used in this way and it's demonized or it's culturally inappropriate now, you know, it's whatever, which would have been a good angle for them to go with because of our current climate and people trying to bring back these hurtful symbols to use for their own aims. They didn't do it. So we just have to make our own conclusion. And that doesn't just go to the hat. That's also her. I was frustrated a little bit, even though I'm liking her performance. It's a hard thing to say, but the Wicked Witch that I know, one of the main defining qualities of her is that she's supposed to be ugly. And I understand that it could be just based on skin tone and it's green and green is bad and that's all that it is. I understand people can just be bullied for their skin tone. It happens and has happened and will continue to happen and hopefully we'll stop it someday. But I guess I was just also thinking, given the people that she's around, I was never quite sure, unless the script gave me reason to believe that what her mother drank, that bottle, was something super bad for society. I just didn't have that context, so I had to invent it myself. And when you're doing that extra work, you just don't feel that connected. And so you're getting this synapsis, fire where you're going, but I don't understand why her just being green is so bad. Maybe it would have helped the audience to give her some warts and some crooked nose and give her something that then you don't want to judge yourself, but you can go, I understand what the filmmaker is doing here. She doesn't match the beauty of someone like Glenda, and that's what separates her.
Right. Yeah. And, we could talk about anti-Semitism when it comes to the depiction of the Wicked Witch of the West. But in addition to that, getting back to our discussion of Sean Baker with Honora, the backbone that he had to portray his hero and protagonist in a very negative light at the end of the movie, it's a similar lack of backbone that perhaps, I don't know, the writers, and I don't blame the director. In fact, I'll elevate the director and actresses and the production and everything. It's just when your script is lacking in story beats that would be understandable and get me behind the story, then I blame the writer. But the lack of backbone, because you would imagine the writers might, who knows, in the beginning thought, well, we got to start with that premise that she has warts and she's hunched over and her hair's scraggly and she is ugly, and the Wicked Witch of the West looks at Judy Garland and sees this pure, young, non-warded face, and is jealous of that and wants to get her because of that. And they might have even floated that, but then eventually they said, well, she's the hero and she has to be beautiful just by that nature, right? And no one wants to cheer for someone with a bunch of warts on their, or whatever. I don't know. You just imagine there might have been some lack of backbone, and similarly, we want Glinda to be the bad guy. That's the whole premise, that the good guy is the bad guy and the bad guy is the good guy. And they might have in the initial drafts had Glinda be a lot meaner and maybe not necessarily redeemable, but then but everyone loves Glinda, so we have to ride that line, and do it poorly. That we want her to be the bully and the likable secondary protagonist. And it's like whereas in Honora, they managed that in spite of making her a jerk face. We're still rooting for her at the end, but we're also going, Annie, what that is. But then because they've fleshed out the character, we understand why she, oh, wow. So
they don't make her palatable, which is appropriate for the goal of the film. And I loved that they were challenging people to look at someone like her and love her and love that she doesn't get hurt at the end, but feel pain when you still feel what she carries from the hurt that she received. That's important for a filmmaker to realize. And they make Alphaba and Glinda palatable, but I think also they were trying to reach a different audience. I don't want to be obtuse about it. I think
Totally.
this film really works for little girls and boys and non-binary children. These are the people that they really wanted to make happy. And I think there are adults certainly that love it, not excluding them, but that will be, I think the movie has that legacy of being a great little musical for children to enjoy.
And obviously it's successful, so what the hell do I know? Yeah. And
me too.
And in no way am I trying to say that Wicked should have had the darkness that Anora did. But but there were similar complaints, if I remember, about Let It Go, the ice.
Frozen?
Yeah, Frozen. And apparently that movie was like rewritten toward the end. Do you remember there was a similar kind of complaint about the plot where they're thinking, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Why would she do this and this at the end?
Well,
but you don't really notice it because it's a good movie just because it's like the pomp and circumstance of the movie just take you away.
The key figure doesn't work. And that's why when you look at the Frozen story, it does kind of fall apart because the villain doesn't work. And if you're going to have a story of good and evil, you really need your villain to work because that's where the drama comes from. And you need characters that you enjoy watching, reacting to that very particular slice of menace, whether it's complete evil or not. They have to be an antagonistic force that is clear and objectively an obstacle.
Right. So, and maybe you remember the specifics, but I seem to remember, and I apologize to the audience if I'm just speaking out of my ass, but I seem to remember that the speculation, or even what they knew from behind the scenes, was that originally the sister, the ice wizardess, was going to be evil. She was going to be actually evil by the end of the movie. But in the screen test or the producers, they were like, no, but we want to like her. So they Frankensteined the second half of the movie to allow that to happen. And the but the things don't really add up because you're thinking, but wait, so she did this, which is horrible. But then she does those things and we're supposed to like her. And so what's going on here? And, is that your recall of that story?
That is correct. There's a twist villain that was, I don't know if it was added, but I believe that his role was amped up to be the end-all be-all of why things happened, but it's not an answer to Act 1. That's a conflict brought in Act 2 that doesn't in any way connect to Act 1 really. I mean, you see him in Act 1, but there's no thread of his activity at all. And so when you're all of a sudden meant to care about what he's done, it's not that it's horrible. It doesn't make it complete trash. It doesn't mean the music is no longer fun. It doesn't mean the animation is all of a sudden bad. It just means the story doesn't really work.
Yeah. And I think that writers should be given the ability to push back on stuff like that, or
absolutely,
or given the ability to say, okay, well then we're going to have to rewrite from the beginning here, because writers typically care and understand story threads. And I'm just going to take a guess and say that a different writer was brought in, or the writers were pressured in the last moment. And I wonder if something like that happened with Wicked, where they were faced with a lot of outside influences telling them, but I want to like Glinda, but I also want Elphaba to be beautiful. And everyone loves Jeff Goldblum, or everyone loves it when the wizard comes out from behind the curtain, so let's do that. And they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense given the Wizard of Oz, which is later on, right? Well, but, we want to see the wizard. That's a bit, okay, well, I guess we'll work that. And, I'm just wondering. Anyway, let's move on, but let's take a break first, and then we'll very quickly just kind of rattle through the other movies of 2024. What do you say?
I would very much like to do that, said Russell Crowe.
All right, we're back from the break. So, speaking of Russell Crowe, Gladiator 2, I gave a 1 out of 10. He wasn't in Gladiator 2, but he was in Gladiator 1. Did you see Gladiator 2?
I did. I thought it was ridiculously camp, and I enjoyed the gay villains. As a gay myself, I thought they were fun. And that's about it.
I was trying to like this in the beginning, and I was the first, I don't know, half an hour or so. But it was just a typical money grab sort of movie, or a writer-director that has lost his way somewhere along the line. Ridley Scott has made some real stinkers, but Ridley Scott is actually, I liked that one movie that he made that, was sort of a little bit controversial to people, with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Kelly. Okay, I'm going to look up Ridley Scott's movies. What was that? Yeah, Last Duel. Yeah. I actually liked that movie. I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's it's not amazing, but I liked it. It was sort of a Rashomon sort of thing, and I liked the style. And there were some silly things about it, but I actually liked it. I hated Napoleon. I gave that a 1 out of 10 too. I know enough about the history of Napoleon to just be so annoyed with what they were doing with the story. I would have been okay with some artistic liberties with what was going on behind the scenes between him and well,
that's where the fun is, right? Is for the author to imagine behind closed doors.
But it was trying to do way too much. It was trying to tell the entire story of Napoleon, and in a similar way, like why people don't like the biopic of Queen and Freddie Mercury, how it's just this Wikipedia style script, instead of a movie like the one with Elton John where it's it's more stylistic, and it's
I like that one.
Focused on an imaginary story beat of him facing this inner child of his and getting out of control and stuff. And so with Napoleon, Joaquin Phoenix is one of the best actors of our age, but he is one, not the right person to play Napoleon, and two, the way he was playing Napoleon was so bothersome to me. I mean, it was just so... every scene, I was just like, yep, that's Joaquin Phoenix trying to be weird as Napoleon. That's Joaquin Phoenix, again, trying to be weird as a Napoleon. You know what I mean? It's just like...
It felt like an SNL sketch of Napoleon.
Yeah, when you get so in your head and you're so arrogant as a combo of Ridley Scott and Joaquin Phoenix, and you just think like everything you do is awesome. It was horrible. But anyway, Gladiator 2 had definite potential, but it was clearly a movie just story beat after story beat, and it can be really summarized by this one shot where everyone remembers, or if you're a fan of the first Gladiator movie, when Maximus would pick up dirt. Whether he's fighting the Gauls in Germany before the battle, he picks up dirt and he rubs it between stands, or he's in the Colosseum as a gladiator and he picks up the dirt and he rubs it. He's getting ready. It's his way of like getting grounded or concentrating or drying his hands off or something. Well, his son has never met his father. So Gladiator 2 is about his son, and he does the same thing. There's this scene where he picks up dirt, and it's like, do you not understand how these, like, you're just creating a fan fiction of his son. And there were multiple moments like that. Now, Denzel was the shining beacon of Gladiator 2. I would have much rather have just seen a whole movie of that character.
Or him fighting with all the other weird people in the Senate. Yeah. There was not enough of that.
Yeah. But everything, and no shade to the actor who plays the lead character of Gladiator 2. But the writing was just so stupid. And again, I know enough about history to know the opening scene where there are these Navy ships that are assaulting a castle, and instead of landing on land and then getting their siege equipment ready to storm the castle, the walls, they attack the castle from the sea, and the castle walls go right up to the waves. In the history of humankind, especially back then, at the very least, when you have land available to you, you would never do that. But, But that's just me being.
No, Shipdar was activated. The way ships worked, or were supposed to work, or were supposed to be throughout the movie, did not work.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sure most people can't relate to that, but that's insane. Okay, so give me something low on your list.
So the lowest film on my list is Mufasa, which is the follow-up to the original Lion King.
I haven't seen it, and I heard bad things, so I wasn't planning on seeing it. But why is it bad?
Well, I don't actually think that I should have seen it, because I went in with a friend and I knew I was not going to like it. But I think that you sort of have to prepare yourself to be surprised. I didn't do that work, so I will at least say, hey, film, I will be completely honest. I didn't like the film that came before, and I was ready to not like this one, and that's on me. Maybe if I watched it in a different context, I would have enjoyed it. However, I found that not only did the characters not work, I thought the animation was slightly better than the first one, but I also...
The first live action one.
The first live, quote-unquote, live action one. This one almost took efforts to disrupt what was so great about the original Lion King, the animated movie that came out when I was a child.
Yeah.
They changed every aspect of Mufasa's character to the point where you don't root for him.
Yeah.
And I was offended because James Earl Jones has recently passed. And when you think about voice actors who have made historical marks on people throughout history, he's got to be high on that list. He was also Darth Vader. You don't even need to list the other credits that he has. Just those two alone, Mufasa and Darth Vader. A legend. And not just him.
Roots, Field of Dreams, and so on.
Right. And also, when you think about Jeremy Irons as Scar, these are two ultimate, iconic, animated movie figures. And not only do they make Mufasa someone you're not wanting to root for, but they make Scar boring. They already had made him boring in the first live action, but they make him more boring here to the point where they're not even technically biological brothers, which was very strange to me. They started changing the story, giving this extra backstory, and they're wanting you. They're they have such a desire. I felt the filmmakers wanting me to go, oh man, isn't Mufasa the rightful king? Isn't this fantastic that this character is going to have all these struggles with these other lions that he meets, and he's going to be the rightful king? And you go through the entire film having no examples of why that should be, and why he should have as much conflict with Scar as he should. But the writers thought it was enough just to have it be a love triangle between Mufasa and Scar and another lioness. And I found it completely unappetizing.
Yeah.
There maybe were worse movies, technically, and also in terms of script, but like Madam Web. But at least with Madam Web, I was having a blast because it was so silly. With Mufasa, my face was a stone.
Yeah. And we could talk about how many contemporary sequels or continuations of TV shows fell into this, what I hope to be a well-understood trap of writing and show running that will be corrected for, I hope, in the future. Classically, Game of Thrones Season 8, and I don't give a shit about spoiling this because it's a shit storyline, that, of course, especially if you read the book, Jon Snow has something to do with the end of the others, right? And for Arya, and God bless everyone, I'm cheering for Arya too, but sure. Arya's story has nothing to do with the others. The Azor Ahai and the Flaming Sword and, just everything. Daenerys and Jon Snow, the Song of Ice and Fire, are thematically and poetically and beautifully intertwined with the others, the Long Winter. And of course, and when you see interviews with D&D, Dave Benioff, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Weiss. They will say, well, yeah, I mean, everyone expected it to be Jon Snow, and so that's why we wanted to do a different person. That is the dumbest, most simplest way of writing. Everyone expects this, so just do another thing, even though it doesn't make any sense. If you want to do it that way, have it make sense. Have people reflect on it after they watch the movie or TV show and say, actually, I can see the precursors. I wasn't paying attention, or it wasn't what I expected, but I can see how that would happen. So all the time with this sort of stuff, I could, with Star Wars, with the most recent trilogy, it was filled with stuff like that. You find Luke Skywalker, finally, yay! Next movie, he throws the lightsaber over his shoulder, and he starts drinking milk straight out of whatever that animal was. And you think he's going to face Kylo, but no, he's a space ghost, and then he dies because why? And then Leia, you think she's going to have this awesome, death. Nope, she just sort of dies because she's sad. And you think Han Solo is going to do something. No, he's just going to get stabbed and fall. You think Kylo is going to be a bad guy, but no, he's actually a good guy. But no, he's a bad guy again. Like, everything is based on not doing what audiences expect to happen. And so with Mufasa, I'm guessing they're like, okay, what can we do that people won't expect? Well, let's make Scar be a good guy. Mufasa is a bad guy. And it's so lazy, and I don't understand, because writers are passionate about writing and the principles of writing and story beats and how to move people, and I just don't understand how writers, and I just gotta figure that it's execs that get in the way. They're the one in control, and so they say the story beats, and the writers are faced with, okay, well, how do I make this work? It's just my guess, or there's just a lot of really shitty writers out there. I don't know.
Well, I'm tired of answers to questions that didn't exist, like, why is his name Scar? Well, it's an animated movie for children about lions that's kind of based on Hamlet, and that's all. It's fine that his name is Scar. He has a different name in this movie, and they make it a point of surprise, where you're supposed to go, wow, my goodness, I really didn't expect that this antagonistic lion was going to end up being Scar. I really couldn't have seen that coming. Great work.
Similarly, Joker 2 was the prime example of this.
Yeah.
Most of me just hates it and thinks that Todd Phillips was up his ass so far that he just didn't understand the assignment or something. And because the execs gave him a lot of leeway with Joker 1, which was a gamble, and it paid off big time, they did it again with Joker 2. And they shouldn't have, There's a small part of me that respects Todd Phillips for essentially having a dialogue with the audience of just like, I was intending on you not liking this character, or at the very least not revering him. And so I'm going to push back on that in this movie. It's just one massive, $200 million troll to the audience. And so on some level, I kind of respect that. But the movie, one, I think just shouldn't have been made. I think there was no way to make a Joker 2 and make it work. Could you have worked the character Joker into a Batman movie? Yeah, maybe. But origin superhero movies are the best. Iron Man 1, Captain America 1, Ant-Man 1. These are really good. It's really hard. It takes a really excellent writer and a focused team of writers and directors and actors to make a sequel and make it good. I really wanted to go against the grain and like this movie. It was so boring, though. But there were a couple scenes that I liked, and there were some bits that I liked. And, of course, Joaquin Phoenix is interesting on screen, and so is Lady Gaga. But when they would break into song, I'm like, oh God. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. it's supposed to be interesting and it's not. And it was long sequences of singing and dancing. And if they had done it once, I think it actually could have been effective. But they do it like 15 times. Every time it's like they start breaking stuff, like, oh, it's supposed to be ironic, or it's like this imaginary place, or I don't know. It's like counter to what you expect. And yeah, okay. But by the 15th annoying time, I'm like, when is this movie going to end? How did you feel about Joker?
I found it very hard to sit through, and it was that was unlike Mufasa. I sat down ready to love it. It had all the things on paper that would please me. Loved the previous film, huge, hardcore Batman film. There's Batman comics to my right over there. Love Joker, love Walking Phoenix, and it just didn't work. I think it was just a swing and a miss. That they just tried a lot of things that fell flat. And I don't think that they had entirely ill intentions behind what they were creating. I think that they were misguided. And they thought that the film would resonate just because, and this is a trend that I'm not quite into, I think they thought it would resonate because there's music and dancing and music and dancing in various sequences. I've found in movies, regardless of the genre nowadays, it feels like most of them feel like they have to have it. And I don't know if it's because it's clippable, if it makes it easier for them to market it, or it gives them great things to use in a trailer that's going to be shared across YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all that. But I just don't think that the music meant anything in the context of the story for either character. It was just sounds. It was just stuff that we were hearing. And there was no purpose to the stylistic decisions. They were just stylistic decisions, sans any kind of connecting thread. So I was not involved from the beginning, nor was I involved at the end. And I do think that some of the side players gave in good performances. Like, I like Brendan Gleeson as one of the jailers. But
yeah, similar to in Gladiator 2, reaching down and picking up the sand. When she goes to the stairway, at the end, when that iconic stairway from Joker 1.
That she's never been on.
Or seen the movie Joker 1.
That would have really been a fourth wall break if then she had revealed that she loved the movie Joker.
But it's his movie, Todd Phillips. He made the sequel. The stairway is iconic in a, it's just like, remember this, it's member berries from South Park. Remember the stairway? Okay, there's a way to work it in and have it make logical sense. Maybe he brings her there, or they just happen to walk past there or something. But she goes there, and it's known to her that this is on his stairway or something. And I'm thinking, and especially by the end of the movie, they had lost me after, I don't know, at least 45 minutes. I was laughing out loud. Thinking, you don't even understand your own movie. Joker 1 was yours. You did that. You don't even get that aspect of it. So, it just was horrific, I thought. So, I'm just going to rattle through my list, and then you can rattle through yours because we're going long. But Rebel Moon Part 2, I gave a 1 out of 10 as well. I actually... am embarrassed to say that I kind of liked Rebel Moon 1. And I know that is a horrific thing to say for some people, but I didn't hate it as much as other people did. I was like okay with it because it was science fiction and the visual, and everyone hates Zack Snyder, and I don't hate him. I don't hate his style. I don't hate his slow-mo stuff. Can it be overused? Sure. But as long as there's a good script, I'm good. And Rebel Moon 1 was not a good script, but it had moments, and I was like, okay. Rebel Moon 2, I don't even have time to go into how bad the script is. It is quite, forget Gladiator 2 or Joker 2. Rebel Moon 2, I can't, if you set out to write a horrible script, I can't imagine achieving such horribleness as Rebel Moon 2. Did you see Rebel Moon 2?
No, I didn't. I think you discussed that you were going to watch it when we hung out once, or you had recently watched it. But no, I like Zack Snyder. I'm a hardcore Snyder Cut fan, not by association. I just like the Snyder Cut.
Oh yeah.
Movie.
Right. I'm glad you bring that up. Yeah, I actually really liked the Justice League Snyder Cut, and not everyone did, but I was like, wow. That's one of those times when the desired director's cut was actually a lot better. You know, the story beats, the emotion. It really was, it wasn't like a perfect movie that I would watch over and over again, but I considered it to be, one of the good superhero movies of our time.
Definitely.
So yeah, Rebel Moon 2, if you're interested, just type into YouTube Rebel Moon Part 2 review, and it is hilarious just how dumb the script is. It's astronomically stupid. There's this whole thing. The whole thing is centered around this small town on a small planet, and the bad guys want their wheat. And just that's the whole premise of 1 and 2, by the way. And it's supposed to be kind of like Seven Samurai meets Star Wars and whatnot, but it doesn't make any sense, even within the movie itself. Anyway, so
even just that synopsis feels derivative of another movie that came out this year, Dune Part 2.
Right. So it's trying to be Seven Samurai in that you have a group of fighters that are against the big baddie.
Sure.
But they're also trying to make wheat out to be kind of like spice, because it is what fuels the empire, the evil empire. And so just look on YouTube.
Okay.
So this might be a little bit of a controversy. So I've told my number ones. I don't have any number 2s, 3s, or 4s, but I do have some 5s, which are, watchable movies, Deadpool and Wolverine. So this is essentially Deadpool 3, right? And I loved some parts of it, but it was boring during a lot of it, and they fell into the trap that they were making jokes of the entire movie about the multiverse and all that stuff. And also, Deadpool 1 and 2 are two of the most perfect comic book comedy movies ever. Deadpool 1 and 2, I will watch every 6 months for the rest of my life. I love those movies on multiple levels. It has heart, it has silliness, it has like over the top silly humor. It's just great. I love Deadpool 1 and 2. Deadpool 2 has a pretty complicated plot around trying to save the mind of this kid, and does it really well, I thought. And so and they integrated new characters. Sometimes in these superhero movies, they have like, okay, now we want to have a spin-off and we want to have these new characters. And it completely goes off the rails. Deadpool 2, they integrate brand new superheroes into the team that I thought was well handled. Anyway, so Deadpool and Wolverine is a pretty mid movie to me. Watchable, and certainly there are some funny moments, but it just felt really tired, and by the end, when we're supposed to be laughing our asses off as all the Deadpools from all the multiverses are, getting slaughtered and stuff, I was just like, I've seen this so many times. It's already been done in this movie so many times, and it's so long. The scenes are so stupid and long, and they're not funny, and just get on with it. So
I think it's too much of a good thing. Not to be too on the nose about it, since we do have 10,000 Deadpools or whatever by the end, but I think that the other two that you mentioned, what's great about it is even though they can get bombastic and over the top, they show restraint, and the restraint helps you invest in the movie. It's really important to not do every idea. It is, actually.
Yeah. And I can see the foundation of it, because from the very beginning, Ryan Reynolds really wanted to do a movie with Hugh Jackman and the beloved character of Wolverine. and it became an internet meme that he wanted to do that. And I feel like that took over, and no one stopped and said, well, is it possible for us to write a movie with these two characters in the current MCU universe as it is in a way that actually is a good movie? If they would have, because I can totally envision a Deadpool Wolverine movie that is in the style of Deadpool 1 and 2, where there's no fucking multiverse for goddamn sure, and there's no TVA, and it's just all that shit. I mean, I loved Loki the first half of the first season. I loved the whole TVA thing and the whole timeline thing. I thought it was actually pretty interesting. But that whole premise is so fucked out at this point. It basically erases any stakes of any sort to anything in the movie, even previous things that have happened. Like there's other universes that, an infinite number, that also matter to us, in which Thanos did win. So it's like complete stupidity, I think, and it's one of the problems that I've had with comic books in general, just before movies of comic books, that it just gets so over the top. If you get into the MCU universe, it just gets out of control. I like things when it's, more grounded, down to earth. That's why I really liked Ant-Man 1, because it wasn't about saving the multiverse. It was just about this smaller story, and you care. Anyway, so that's that. I'm going to go faster. My number, another movie I gave a 5 to was Juror Number 2, Clint Eastwood's most recent movie. I thought it was fine. It was pretty predictable, and I could see someone loving this movie. I could see someone hating this movie, but that's fine. 5. Wild Robot, the cartoon, I gave a 5 out of 10. I thought that the Wild Robot cartoon was I brought like multiple handkerchiefs to the movie because I thought it was going to be like the Iron Robot, or right, the Iron Giant, Iron Giant,
or Wally.
Yeah, Iron Giant, Wally. I thought it was. Now, granted, they weren't necessarily advertising it as such, but I thought, given the previews, that it would be. The Wild Robot is a mid cartoon for kids, and it's fine. It's fun, but it's no Iron Giant. It's no Wall-E. It certainly isn't an Inside Out, and it was fine. Wicked, I gave a 5. We already talked about that. The Fall Guy with what's his face? With Ryan Gosling, the other Ryan. I gave it 6 out of 10. I thought it was fine. The ending was way too long. It has like 5 endings. Have you seen it? Did you see The Fall Guy?
I thought the movie was a little overindulgent. It's pretty low on my list.
Okay. I'm just going to mention a TV show, The Three Body Problem. There are elements of the Three Body Problem TV show, and I haven't read the books. I've heard the storyline of the books, which sounds really interesting, but also like potentially like also kind of weird and out there. But as a astronomy science guy, my amateur astronomy guy, there were elements of the Three Body Problem TV show and apparently the book that I was just like, oh my God, that's so cool that they did that. The technology and the way that the alien race has to plan in advance of invasion, and then humans have this time, and the wall people, or what do they call it? The people who stare at the wall. I can't remember what they call them, but they're special humans that never talk about what they're thinking. And I thought there were so many elements to that TV show that were really interesting and very entertaining for me, but there are other parts of it that were not to me. I just thought that is boring and silly, and why were we spending so much time in the beginning of this story with this one thing? And so I thought it was 6. 6 is good. Last night, Stacey and I watched The Brutalist. It's up for an Oscar, and I gave it a 6 as well. And have you seen The Brutalist?
I was about to see it. So, similar with Past Lives, when that movie was coming out, I had plans to see it with somebody. They kept getting put off because the person was flaking. So that sort of happened with this. And then I neglected to watch it on my own because there was some mention that it used AI. I'm trying to figure out how I feel about AI in general.
Well, used AI how? Used AI how?
So there was a little article that mentioned that there's some like touches that were put into the movie, basically that could have been someone's job, but it was implemented to finish the movie.
Like an effect?
Yeah.
Oh.
I
didn't
don't
notice
have a
that.
big stance on it. I don't really have a super problem with it. There was one thing that colored my state of being, because I was in a moment where I was really thinking about AI, and so I just didn't throw it on. And also the length. I love a good long movie, but every time I planned to go see it on my own, I never had enough hours to
it's way too long. If it was cut in half, it would be like an 8 for me. But as it is, it's a 6. It's an interesting movie, and I would say the first hour is really interesting. What I learned halfway through the movie, because I looked it up, was that this is a complete fiction movie. It's not a biopic. The movie, looks from the trailers and when you're first watching the movie, like this is a real story. This is a biopic of a real guy. But it's not. There is an architect, a designer who is maybe kind of being referenced, but it's nothing. It's not his life or anything. So I thought that was really interesting, and I commend them for doing that, because a lot of biopics are used as a way of telling a fictional story, and it'll annoy me, like with Napoleon, the movie.
Yep.
It's like, if you just want to tell a story of a general and you want to tell your own version of it, then and then just make up a name,
Right.
Like with Gladiator, for example. That's that person didn't exist, and they shouldn't have named the emperors like they do, because Marcus Aurelius and Gladiator 1, that's actually one of the annoying things, is that the emperors, there's a fair amount of written history about these people, and the way that they were portrayed was, not accurate in the least. Anyway,
he wouldn't have done what he did at the end if he was the real emperor.
There's all sorts of things that wouldn't have happened. But anyway, so the movie, The Brutalist, it's weird. It's hard to know why it's good in the beginning, but it is to me. And I was, very interested in seeing where this was headed. And it's a unique, we don't usually see stories like this. Mm-hmm. And really interesting characters, and it felt real. It felt, I don't know if it was, but it feels like it could have happened in this time period in the late 40s, early 50s. But then the second half of the movie, it just feels like a bunch of scenes that the writer-director wanted to have, and it just felt like there needed to be a producer that would step in and say, you've got to cut this script down. There's no reason why this second half, at least the whole second half, needs to be included. Pick a few scenes and commit to those, but the rest of this needs to go. And there's some characters that I don't even understand why they were in the movie, honestly.
Do you remember anything about the voices? Because it's really not worth talking about, because I'm not an expert on it, and I haven't even figured out
accents?
how I feel about it. It was a voice effect. So
the AI
changed. It altered the actors' voices, which
the entire movie.
Not the entire movie. There were particular. I don't know how many lines of dialogue.
Well, okay. I wonder if
the voice has been changed.
So one of the things I noticed, so one of the interesting things about this movie is that it looks like a very expensive movie because it's a period piece. But apparently the movie only cost like $8 million, which is an absurdly low amount of money.
That's why I'm skeptical. That's why.
And when you look at the movie, it makes sense that it's very inexpensive. I'm guessing that Adrian Brody and Guy Pearce accepted a very low fee because,
Sure.
They're pretty big names. So there's that. But also the way that it's shot, like, in a typical contemporary movie from the late 40s, they'll do an establishing shot of the street, right, where you see all the old cars and whatnot. And it might be CGI in part, right? But they'll have to get extras and da-da. And they never do that. So instead of there's there's hardly any establishing shots. So you see one old timey car in the background, and that's it. And it's real tight shots. So that's one. But if you're talking about voices, there were two things that I noticed in the movie. One was that this one character, Guy Pearce's son, I think he's like Harry Jr. is his name. Every time he talked, it felt like the voice was disconnected from his face. And the whole time I was thinking, is that guy, because they shot this in Hungary. By the way, the writer-director is from Scottsdale, and he's not Jewish. So when I found that out after the movie, because I thought the way this whole movie looks and feels, it's like there's some really dark sex scenes, difficult to watch sex scenes in this movie, or sex scenes that you would never see in a typical American movie. And while Stacey and I were watching it, Stacey would go like, "Oh, whoa," and I'd be like, "Well, Europeans, because European movie directors, they have artsy movie auteurs in Italy or France. They have a different, think of Call Me by Your Name.
Right.
That has, if it was an American Hollywood writer director, they would have told a story with a lot less of the edges, especially the sexual edges, the apple scene and all that stuff.
They would have screwed that peach.
Yeah, They might not have even, so to speak, they might not have even made the movie to begin with. But so when I watch this movie, I'm just like, wow, this is clearly an old school writer director from Italy or France or maybe even Hungary, I don't know. And then I had
Scottsdale.
But it's this young guy from Scottsdale. He's like 35 years old. He looks like a gamer. He looks like, comic store guy or something, and talks like it too. And I'm just like, whoa, what is going on in this guy's mind? Anyway, and I commend him for that,
For sure.
And it's his first movie. Anyway, and I commend A4 or A24 for even greenlighting this stuff. It's just like such a swing, but for $8 million, right? Anyway, so the Harry character, whenever you talk, I'm like, I was thinking maybe he's Hungarian and his accent is so bad. He tried to do an American accent. Guy Pearce's American accent is flawless, by the way. I'm always impressed with non-Americans and their American accents. But the son, I thought, well, maybe they hired a Hungarian guy, because a lot of the extras, I think, were Hungarian because they were shooting in Hungary. And his accent was off, and so they had another guy come in who had an American accent who ADR, who recorded the line, the sound afterwards. And it's hard to match that up. So that could be the AI. The other thing I noticed was that a lot of the scenes, and I knew it was a low-budget movie, and when you have a low-budget movie, one of the ways you can really cut back on cost is to do a lot of ADR, to do a lot of – you shoot the movie with a rough draft recording of the dialogue, and then later on, once you have the movie cut, you bring in the actors into the sound studio and you have them record, because when you're on set, it's really hard to isolate the sound. You have – cars and you have wind and you have airplanes going on overhead, and it can really drag production down. Whereas if you just decide we're going to record all of our lines ADR later on, especially when we're outside, then it makes it so much faster and easier to shoot. The other thing is this movie has a lot of oneers. I've never, where it's one shot where they don't cut.
Ooh.
And it's pretty flawless. Like the movie, I'm going to take a guess, and it might have, especially among Best Picture nominations, the most one-shot scenes that's ever been in Hollywood. Like that was the norm. Almost every scene was a one-shot scene where they don't cut, they don't edit. It has to be performed and blocked and shot. And so that's another reason why you would do ADR, because it's really hard to get a boom mic into the actors while you're running all over a scene. You know what I mean? Anyway, so I noticed that an inordinate amount of scenes had ADR. And it was pretty good ADR. Like if I wasn't paying attention, I would have thought it was just a recording of the live performances, but I could tell that it was ADR. And so I wonder if that's the AI bit, is that they were on a budget, and when they got into the editing room, they're like, ooh, a lot of the dialogue is not good, and we have to figure out a way to fix this while staying under budget, not reshooting and not spending weeks and weeks doing ADR, and maybe we'll use AI because that's a new technology. I could see that happening.
Well, if that's the case, it sounds like even if they did, which, I'm not speaking at it from any kind of position of authority, but I will say it sounds like even if that was implemented, there are far more decisive elements that were successes than things that detracted from the film experience. And you telling me about things that were done, for example, those one-shots, it gets me excited to see it. So it does sound like there was a clear vision, and whatever was done was hopefully done in service of the film and making sure it got made. So
right,
that it's actually been pretty uplifting hearing about the movie from your perspective.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It gets dark, and I don't know what the thesis of the movie is, aside from the obvious thesis that immigrants are treated like shit when they come to the United States. I think that is a thesis of the movie, but I can't tell. And there are a lot of things are happening in this movie, and yeah, I just wish if the second half is essentially without. I mean, it's a minor spoiler, I guess, but it's typical story of this sort, where it's kind of a downfall of the situation, and that downfall sputters and is strung out so long. And there's confusing scenes where I'm like, is this supposed to be considered part of the downfall, or are we just languishing in the horribleness of these people's lives? And I'm all for horribleness. David Lynch is one of my favorites, Anora has horribleness, a lot. So it's not about, but it's about, I mean, I hate to say this, but it's about entertainment, I want it to be interesting. So, because I kind of felt like similar to, what was that movie with Cate Blanchett last year? She's a conductor.
Oh, that's Tar.
Tar. Similarly, I thought things should have been cut. There were scenes that were amazing. The story had potential, but toward the end, I'm just like, when will this end? And with The Brutalist, it was that way. But I don't know. I could see myself rewatching this movie. There's a lot of interesting scenes, and I don't know why. Anyway. Moving up to my ratings of number 7, giving it a 7 out of 10. Kung Fu Panda 4, not to change the mood at all, but that's the lowest rating I've given any Kung Fu Panda movie, which tells you something about how much I love Kung Fu Panda 1, 2, and 3. 4 is fine, and 7, pretty good. I forgot this movie came out in 2024, but Civil War, that movie came out in 2024.
Oh shit, you're right.
Yeah, I gave that a 7 out of 10. Alex Garland movie.
Not on my list.
And, I could see someone not liking the movie, but I thought it was effective at what it did. I think it might have jumped the shark a little bit at the end. In fact, I will say it definitely jumped the shark at the end. They could have told that story without the jump from realism that the final scene does. But, it wasn't, 7 out of 10.
Scared the shit out of me, honestly.
I know. Another movie that I gave a 7 was Transformers 1. Did you see this, the cartoon?
No, I'm not a big Transformers guy.
I'm not either.
Beast Boys growing up.
I'm not either, but I assume you've seen at least one of the Transformer movies with...
I think I saw the first 3. The first one, Dark Moon, and then whatever was next.
So those movies have their moments, but the sequels in particular are pretty bad, for me anyway. And Transformers 1, the cartoon, is a complete departure from all of that, and it's much more in the Transformers world that I grew up with. And it's a good script, and it makes sense. It's an origin story of the good guy and the bad guy. similar to other things we've talked about thus far, like with Mufasa. I guess, yeah, it'd be kind of like that. And it does it really well. And the writing is good. And there's some pretty big moments, yeah. And it's a pretty tight movie. And the world is interesting. Anyway, Beetlejuice 2, I gave a 7 out of 10. Did you watch that?
That's another one I forgot to put on my list.
So, Tim Burton movie. I went into this thinking I wouldn't like it that much, but I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It is a rare moment, and Tim Burton is kind of hit or miss in his later career. And you just think it would be really hard to make a Beetlejuice 2 movie work, but I felt like it did. It wasn't like amazing, but I was entertained. Are you entertained? Yes, I was entertained. What did you think of Beetlejuice 2?
I thought it was two different movies kind of spliced into one. It felt like the filmmaker was a lot more interested in the teen drama of the guy who ends up being not so great, and I think the filmmaker was more interested in the lead actress than the Beetlejuice character or the Catherine Hahn character. I was more interested in those elements, and I felt like a lot of it was kind of disconnected. The plot line with the mean boy was one, and then you've got Beetlejuice having some kind of financial problem. I don't know. And then he's also being stalked by his beautiful ex-wife or ex-lover. And then also Catherine Hahn's got stuff going on where she's dealing with, spoilers, her afterlife. And then you've also got one of the dudes, her husband from the first movie, walking around with his head cut off, or actually his top part completely gone. It's fine. And I didn't really expect it to be this polished experience. So I enjoyed parts of it. I just think I was more interested in all the stuff that the filmmaker seemed to just kind of have in there. I wasn't really into the teenage stuff, but I really liked Monica Bellucci. Even though she didn't have a lot to do, I was very entertained. And then it's just always a joy for Michael Keaton, Catherine O'Hara. I can watch them do anything. So I still had fun.
Yeah, it was a rare instance of maybe a money grab, if you will, that actually was a legit sequel. It felt connected to the first movie and didn't erase the first movie.
That is true. Crucial true.
Yeah. And thematically, it felt very Tim Burton-y. There were all these years later, it was like 35 years later, I don't know, a long time, that you could have the sets look the same and the extras feel the same. And 7 out of 10.
Great production design, for sure.
Yeah. Another movie I gave 7 out of 10 was Beatles 64. It's just a documentary, but I love the Beatles. Another movie I gave a 7 out of 10 was A Real Pain. Jesse Eisenberg. Have you seen this movie?
No, I have not.
Oh, you got to see this movie. So
I'll write it down.
It is about and it's somewhat autobiographical of Jesse Eisenberg. He wrote, and I think he directed, about two cousins that go back they go to Poland, I believe, to visit a concentration camp and visit their grandma's house that she fled from, I think, or something. Anyway, and they're on a tour with other people that are interested in exploring Jewish heritage in Eastern Europe, and it doesn't really have a plot. It's one of those it's sort of like a Sideways kind of movie where it's
I like Sideways.
Yeah, where it's like interactions between real humans and
that's great.
And the story arc. And so with this movie, the whole premise is that Jesse Eisenberg is the person we can kind of relate to, but he's a little uptight. And then the Kieran Culkin character is this in the moment, extroverted, bothersome / likable, charismatic / annoying at times sort of character. He's the real pain. Jesse Eisenberg's like, my cousin's being a real pain kind of a thing. And in the beginning of the movie, so that's the whole premise, is that tension between likable and uptight, and likable and annoying and out there. And us watching are being kind of pulled in. And in the beginning, I really did not like the Kieran Culkin character. He was a real pain. And there were a lot of moments where I was just like, God, that guy. I mean, why is the Jesse Eisenberg character hanging out with this guy? It's just so, oh, God. It's just like, ugh. And this is one of those moments where the writer had backbone in that he made a character that we're supposed to kind of relate to, at least by the end of the movie, for an extended amount of time. Not just the first introduction of the character, but like for a long period of time. For me, anyway, he was really annoying. And then, in a very realistic way that doesn't diverge from his character either, things evolve through. And I, ended up having a complicated relationship with the Kieran Culkin character of like and respect, but also maybe I wouldn't want to hang out with the guy, but maybe I would if I wanted to be challenged, because that was his thing, is he was spontaneous in the moment, and he would react to people very authentically. And people around him would have this decision of like, that's not normal. Like, get out of my, emotional space, dude. But then people would be almost waiting for someone to see them, and not be afraid to like call shit out, And for those characters, they would be transformed by it in a real way, believable way. And so, very unique movie, and I could see some people hating it at being boring or something, or hating the Kieran Culkin character, and just you can't get through it. But I found it to be a very effective movie for what it set out to do.
Sounds like almost like Sonic 3. Sounds like
another movie I recently watched was Conclave. Gave that 7 out of 10. About choosing of the next pope, and I liked it. I could see some people thinking it was boring or something, but it worked on me. I feel like the end was a little over the top, but I liked it. The tension and just seeing into that world of the cardinals choosing the next pope in a contemporary situation, and how a lot of the characters I liked. Anyway, moving on. Furiosa, I gave an 8. I really liked that movie. Not as much as the first Mad Max recent movie, but I really liked it.
That's hard to beat.
Did you like Furiosa?
I haven't watched it because I really, really love Fury Road.
Yeah.
So I was a little hesitant to. I need to, though. I've heard good things.
It's different.
It felt done. When I watched Fury Road, I went, that's a wonderful single slice of this world, and I don't really need to know anything more about any of these people who I've come to really connect with in an action-packed, visceral way. But I'm going to try to open my mind to it. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I think that it's possible for someone to watch Furiosa and to feel like, I feel like it's ruining my vision of something, but I liked it. 8 out of 10, I really like. Inside Out 2, I gave an 8. It is Inside Out 1 is one of my favorite movies of all time. Not just one of my favorite Pixar or cartoon, but one of my favorite movies of all time. Top 5. And Inside Out 2 was great. 8 out of 10, but not nearly as good as Inside Out 1. I think partially because Inside Out 1 is a coming of age or an introduction to the world, and so Inside Out 2, you need to add to it. And I thought they added to it really well. I mean, 8 out of 10, that's a high mark for me. And the new emotions that they involved, I thought, were really well done. But
the delicate simplicity of the first one is not achieved, because everything you watch in the first one, you can take a moment with how that particular Inside Out gimmick functions, and you have an immediate thematic resonance. You can empathize with it immediately. It's not that never happens with Inside Out 2, but it's not as quick, it's not as effective, it's just not as sharp.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, the delicateness of the first one. I mean, there's that moment when anxiety is out of control, right?
It's a good one.
And that's a really good moment, for sure. And 8 out of 10, like I said. What did you think overall of Inside Out 2?
I thought that Inside Out 2 had a hard job because Inside Out 1 is just so stellar. I was a little bit confused at times about how the inner workings of these new emotions were affecting Riley. For some reason, the film seemed to be building up to this gut punch of a reveal of a developmental change of something that then we were going to then understand about her as a person. Because she's more mature, it could do that where the first film really couldn't do it, but then they didn't do it, and so maybe I just need to get over myself. That wasn't what their goal was. I thought maybe they were going to just
something more definitively tweenish, or
yes,
like sexuality or something.
Right. I thought they were going to make a choice about defining Riley and clarifying her unique experience of the world with these more complicated emotions. But the style was so similar to the first one, whereas Riley from the first one is so young, she's sort of proto anyone. Yes, there's degrees of difference for children as well, obviously. But because of the level at which the emotions were, it was just a little bit more digestible as something that's meant to stand for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was hoping they would challenge me more by leading me towards some different darkness in Riley that I didn't really fully get. But again, not really negatives, just more expectations that weren't really met, and that's on me as a viewer. I think it's a well-made film with great vocal performances.
Yeah. Or actually, this TV show that I'll recommend people watch is the Dune TV show on HBO. I gave it an 8 out of 10 so far. I haven't finished the season yet, but I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't have much hopes for this TV show, but I found it to be pretty good. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos breaking down all the lore of Dune, which is really extensive, and that is helping in watching the TV show because it happens 10,000 years before the movies do. So you have to...
a little bit of legwork there.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what people... because... Dune, the book and the movies, it's pretty complicated, and I would imagine most casual viewers of the movies would like the movies, but not really comprehend, because why would they, the between the lines stuff about messiahs and about manipulation and about the dangers of charismatic figures. And because, I think most people would watch Dune, the movie, and say, yeah, Muad'Dib, Timmy Chalamet, you did it. But that is not the meaning of the story. The meaning of the story is that is potentially a horrible thing that he's actually stepping into, of that role of the Messiah. And he is, but at the same time, there's these injustices that are happening from the Emperor. So it's not a bad thing that the Emperor is getting his just dessert, but at the same time, like when you have this charismatic, especially when you know what happens in the future, it gets really complicated after, Paul. Anyway, so the TV show is about the beginning of the Bene Gesserit's mission to create the Quetzalcoatl cataract. How do you say it? Quetzalcoatl, you know what I'm saying. The Messiah. Yeah. Anyway, another...
Well,
go ahead.
That's great, because I had been wanting to watch that, and for the reasons that you mentioned, Dune 2 worked for me on pretty much every technical level that is possible, but didn't work for me on a story level, because I thought there was a missing element there.
Yeah, I imagine if you watched some of the YouTube videos or read the books laying out the underlying story, I think Dune works so well. Anyway.
Awesome.
So another movie that I gave an 8 to was A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie.
The other Timmy T.
Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I liked it. I thought in relation to talking about biopics trying to bite off more than they can chew, this is focusing on a shorter period of time of Bob Dylan's career. Also, from my understanding of history and of the time period and the context of the folk movement and of rock and roll in the United States and pop music and all that stuff, I thought that you could not have made a better Bob Dylan movie, honestly. I think it's hard to do, but of that
Great.
sort of thing, I thought they did a really good job. And if you like Bob Dylan and you know the history of his life, I think you would like this movie. I'm not a super expert, but I know enough about it. And also, if you have no idea who Bob Dylan is, I would imagine that this would also be a good movie. And Tim Chalamet does, again, as good as a job as anyone, and he's a very good actor. And I'm not the first person that is saying this, I imagine, but I think we are possibly witnessing the beginning of quite possibly the best actor that has ever lived. Timothée Chalamet, when I take in the body of his work, I mean, we can talk about Meryl, we can talk about Bob De Niro, sure. We can talk about Gary Oldman, for Christ's sake, but those are careers spanning decades, and there's some duds in there. And I'm trying to think of a Timmy Chalamet movie and a performance that is a dud.
Did you see Wonka?
I loved Wonka.
Oh, okay.
I loved it. I did. I mean, I don't even like that kind of stuff, and I'm not a big musical guy. And I think I gave it a 7 out of 10, but it's not meant to be, like a Dune movie or something. But I enjoy it. I think I even rewatched it. Did you like Wonka?
I didn't care for it.
Did you think Timmy did a good job?
I wasn't sure that he was. I don't know that I would put any of this on him, but it was not my sense of who Wonka is, because Gene Wilder, when he portrayed the character, there's this undercurrent of menace, but it's also underlaid with so much harmless mischief, harmless, like there's a mischievous quality to him, and yet there's this intellectual vibration. And what I thought was done with Wonka was they made a character who was only good, only soft, only charming, and that's not my sense of Wonka. And I don't think anybody, even such a great actor as him, could have made me want to pull the mystique off of Willy Wonka. I sort of didn't even want it to happen when Johnny Depp played the character. I think that's maybe just a me thing. I don't really want Wonka touched on. I don't know.
I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people are in your shoes, particularly people in my generation, having grown up so much. I mean, the thing about kids' movies for Gen X people was that there were so few of them that we watched them all 100 times. You didn't just watch the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka movie once. You watched it regularly because there wasn't anything else to watch.
Right.
You saw the same Bugs Bunny cartoons over and over again. It was just built into our lives. And so when you fall in love with Gene Wilder, or you just get used to him, it's really weird. And yeah, I agree. And I've read the books as well. And yeah, the Willy Wonka character is way more complicated than portrayed. But in spite of that, I liked the writing. I thought it was pretty tight. The music I thought was good. The story was good. The acting was good. But yeah, Call Me by Your Name, Dune 1 and 2, A Complete Unknown,
Miss Stevens.
That movie with Steve Carell where Timmy plays
Beautiful Boy.
Yeah. The Wes Anderson, the Lady Bird, the Wes Anderson movie. The girls. What's the remake that Greta Gerwig?
There's the cannibal one.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I didn't know he was in that. But then the one, the movie with little girls, or what's the movie? Greta Gerwig. She redid
Little Women.
Little Women. Yeah.
That obscure Louis Marie Alcott,
Yeah.
short story. Just kidding.
So,
Novel.
and he's not in that tremendously, right? But
No.
so I don't know, like in the same year you have Dune and Dune Part 2, Tim Chalamet, and I'll just cut to the chase. That's my number one movie for the year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I when I saw it in the theaters, I really liked it. I think I gave it an 8 out of 10, but I've recently rewatched it a couple times, and again, getting into the lore, I think it for Denis Villeneuve to tackle this and do it so well. I mean, I loved the David Lynch Dune movie and was okay with the fact that it lacked a lot and had a lot of problems with it, because I understand just how fucking hard it is, one, to make a science fiction epic, but two, to encapsulate the books into a movie. It is such a weird world, and the way it translates from page to the screen, it's so hard. Many people had thought, Jodorowsky's Dune, there was all these fantasies about making this into a movie, and a lot of people had agreed a long time ago it just wasn't possible. And Denis Villeneuve has just done it so well, and he kept the heart. And he, if you understand the lore, and also Timmy Chalamet, I'm calling him Timmy because apparently that's what everyone calls him. It's sort of like Bob De Niro.
He was a rapper when he was in high school, and so people lovingly call him Timmy T.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's other people like this, like who is there's other actors where you're thinking, oh yeah, of course no one called him Philip Seymour Hoffman. Of course he went by Phil in all likelihood. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, Phil and I, like when people talk about Robert De Niro, so yeah, Bobby or Bob. Yeah, Bob and I, and you're thinking, Bob, who the hell is Bob? Anyway.
Or Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah,
was everyone calling him?
Yeah. Although you could imagine him demanding.
Or that, actually, as I said that, I went, wait a minute, actually he might be the exception.
Sir Daniel Day-Lewis. But yeah, so Complete Unknown, 8 out of 10, and Dune Part 2, I gave a 10 out of 10. And I couldn't really choose between Anora and Dune Part 2. So there's that. And I'll also throw in a couple TV shows from the last year. Shogun, I gave a 10 out of 10. Baby Reindeer, I gave an 8 out of 10. And what other TV show was in there that I was gonna? Oh, I already talked about.
I was gonna make a list of them. I was like, did I watch any? I watched Skeleton Crew, Shogun, and House of the Dragon. I didn't watch a lot of television.
I started watching Skeleton Crew, and was okay with it, but I didn't finish it. I don't know why. Is it good?
It's fun. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Anyway,
so
please continue.
Those are my movies, and what. So please, Colin, tell us the entirety of your list.
Okay, so it's fairly long. I hope it's not boring. Do you want me to do a section? There's 57 here.
57?
I watched a lot of movies. I didn't watch a lot of television, but I watched a lot of movies. Do you want me to just do, like, maybe the top 20 or top 15?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll do top 15. So 15 is Maria, which is about Maria Callas, the opera singer. Number 14, surprisingly enough, everything leading up to sitting down led me to believe I would hate it, but I was seeing it out of almost obligation, but I ended up loving it. 14 is Twisters.
Oh, really?
I had a great time.
Okay.
13 was Zoe Kravitz's, I believe, debut feature film, Blink Twice. I thought that it was really wild in a good way, the kind of fever dreamy movie that I can vibe with.
Okay.
I don't mind when a movie goes in wild directions, and did a decent enough job of justifying that. So it's, are we allowed to say the P word here on piss?
Yeah. I don't know what P word you're referring to, but yes.
So the original title for the movie was, I believe, conceived as Pussy Island. So the idea was to knock on, or to have a commentary on certain evil, quote unquote. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's not a proper terminology. Terrible men who have hurt and manipulated women systematically. This rich actor, or maybe he's not even a rich actor, he's a rich businessman or something, played by Channing Tatum, super handsome, super charismatic, brings all these women to party on this island, drugs them all, and then gives them memory loss pills so that when they wake up, they don't remember how they're essentially being all of the bad words, all of the triggering words, all of the bad things happen at night.
Jiminy Crickets.
It's the most
so it's
disturbing
like a mystery. They all wake up and they're like, wait, what happened? And they try to piece it together and have to prevail against the villain in the end, kind of thing.
Yes, and like many movies this year, there's an element of drug use. There's in a lot of movies, a lot of drug stuff. And it loses me a little bit in some of the practicalities that the substance just knocked out of the park, but I still enjoyed it. So that was 13, and I really liked the direction. That was my favorite part of it, was Zoe Kravitz's direction. Next, number 12 is Oddity, which is this bizarre horror film about grief and loss and manipulation. Number 11, we've already talked about, Conclave. Number 10, which I found to be underrated this year, although it may just have been to my taste, Lisa Frankenstein. Did you see Lisa Frankenstein?
No.
Okay, so Robin Williams, he has a daughter, Zelda Williams, and she directed the film, and it's got this 80s, punk pop style to it, and I just love the costuming, and I think the script is really witty and fun. It reminded me of some of Diablo Cody's best stuff. Actually, it may have been Diablo Cody that wrote it. Anyway, I like films like that, Juno, etc. We have Immaculate, which is a possession film that I loved, starring Sydney Sweeney. That's number 9.
Is that like a horror movie or
horror for sure?
Okay.
Yeah. It's all about like the loss of body autonomy, the power of the church and the patriarchy, and how you fight against that, and what societies that uphold that, what they look like. But it's all under this minimalist setting of this one church that she joins a convent of nuns. You get to see.
Just to chime in, I'm glad you're telling us this list, because for the listeners, each of you and me are casting a pretty wide net of movie watchers, because the kind of stuff I'm watching is, I guess Gen X dude sort of stuff, and then what you're watching is I don't know what you'd call it. Are you a millennial, or are you even younger than millennial?
On the young side of millennial.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So
millennial, Gen Z.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I haven't even heard of a lot of these movies. I'm pretty sure I've heard of Blink twice, but these other ones I'm like, huh? So some of the audience are like, finally, someone's talking about movies that I watch. Anyway.
Number 8 is Speak No Evil. Did you see that one?
No.
James McAvoy.
Right. Tell me about this. I've seen a trailer.
It's hard to describe without giving away spoilers.
Oh, yeah. It was heavily trailered in movie theaters.
Oh,
it's a family
to an annoying degree.
Yeah, a family goes to visit him, James McAvoy, and they're in a cabin somewhere, and maybe he's evil is the thing, right? So they kind of spoil a bit of the movie.
Yeah, the trailer, first of all, is too articulate, shall we say. But also, thank you for saying that it played too long and too often. The trailer is the reason I waited until it was streaming to see it. I was so annoyed with that trailer. I needed space.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that was the case. Number 7.
So it's good.
Night
It's
Bitch.
effective. That it's a good, powerful McAvoy, because it looked like it could go either way. I could see it being really effective, but I could also see it being really predictable.
Well, to me, the predictable nature of it was not really even a factor, because what was most enjoyable about it wasn't thinking about, is this man going to do something terrible? You're pretty aware. Maybe you don't know how it's going to go down. Maybe you don't know who's going to make it out alive. There is X factor aplenty, but the process of watching it, which is similarly, even though it's a different genre, is also how I felt about Conclave. I just enjoyed the thrill of being in the movie, and whether or not the conclusion was something I could predict or not was not the thing that sold the ticket for me. And I just enjoyed watching the interplay between all these fantastic actors, and they play with conditioning in a way that is horrific. How one can be conditioned, how one's conditioning can be weaponized. It's very freaky to me. And it also is in that trend of all the men in Hollywood that I've ever been attracted to are now playing serial killers. They're all playing serial killers. So,
Channing
James
Tatum.
McAvoy, Channing Tatum, they're all serial killers now. Or some adjacent, element of that. Number 7, as I mentioned before quickly, was Night Bitch. That's the new Amy Adams film. It's a great film about discovery. It's an interesting take on motherhood that I really vibed with. Number 6 is Queer, which spoke to the sadness and longing of queer life sometimes, where you feel as though you have to constantly make yourself better to prove that you deserve love, because society hasn't really made you think that you just deserve that, or that your love is something worth having on its own. It's a very specific character. He's not meant to be a cipher for all gay or queer men, but I just liked I think the film, even though the story is very like paper thin, the experience watching Daniel Craig, who I love, going through all of that was phenomenal. And just that very specific queer thing, even though men and women who, or anybody, any gender who identifies as heteronormative or heterosexual or whatever, maybe they have this experience in a particular way, but the specificity of being queer and closeted, or even like something adjacent to closeted, wanting to connect with somebody, but having to do the mental gymnastics of, can I even reach this person? Is this person even shopping in my department? That's this whole series of things you go through that the movie got at really well. Also, a ton of drugs in that movie. Number 5, a very, very sexy queer film, Love Lies Bleeding. Did you see that?
No.
It's a noir with Kristen Stewart right at the center, proving once again that you shouldn't judge an actor based on a bad movie. She is an absolute stud. She's Humphrey Bogart, hero, loved her in it, and it's a great setting. Get this like grimy, sweaty, pulpy, atmospheric tension. Love the style, love the symbolism, and the score is phenomenal. We've already talked about it. Number 4 is Anora.
I just want to say this old man asterisk here of that I want to highlight how far we've come as a society and as moviegoers and as Hollywood making queer-themed movies. Mm-hmm. I remember a time in the 90s when just a movie about gay people was such an anomaly, and it was such a avant-garde thing to do, and it was so risky, and they were often very low budget and not supported by the major studios, that at least me and my circle would run out and see it regardless of how good it was because it was like, oh my God, it's a movie about lesbians, for example. I remember this one movie like mid-90s. I can't remember the name of it. And it wasn't a particularly good movie, but it was so great, liberating to see just a regular film that had lesbians, that they were just having a life, and it wasn't just all about them being gay. It was it wasn't, and they weren't like the villains in the movie, for example, or they weren't the friend. It was just a slice of life kind of movie. And hearing about, and of course, I've seen a lot of the contemporary movies you've seen, and and this list there's a lot more, obviously. And I'm just highlighting just how successful we have been as a society pushing the ball forward, and it gives me hope that we can continue pushing that ball forward.
Thank you for that. Number 4, as I mentioned, was Anora. Number 3, embarrassingly, Sonic 3. Number 2 which we've already discussed, was The Substance, which just leaves my number one.
Would I know this one? Do I know this movie?
Number one?
Yeah. Is it? I'm going to take a guess. Is it Nosferatu?
No.
Have you seen that?
I did see Nosferatu.
Did you like it?
Eggers is one of my favorite directors, and it's one of my least favorite films of the year.
Okay.
And I feel weird about admitting that because I sat down just in my bones knowing I would love it. And I also love the 70s film by Werner Herzog. I think it's an interesting, creepy, stylistic Isabella Gianni vehicle. This one, I felt like it was overproduced, but there's terrific direction. There's terrific style to the shots. Eggers does all the right work. I think I just maybe prefer Lighthouse Eggers. I want more art house Eggers. But then again, I also love The Northman. That was one of my favorite films of that year. It's a very bizarre series of circumstances that led me to think that that film was just kind of vacant and I didn't care about anybody. And I also didn't get a sense of Bill Skarsgård's performance, which was bizarre because if you look at the actor and you think about him in It or some of his other roles, you think based on the 70s Isabella Gianni film, he's perfect for that kind of a Nosferatu. But then they have this distance where his voice is really affected. I don't know why I'm so triggered, quote unquote, by voice modification in this review. I talked about it too long, I feel like, but for some reason I just didn't get a sense of his performance because it was all spectacle done by effects, and he's so make-upped that I just didn't feel connected to that.
So it's the same filmmaker of The Northman and Witch.
Robert Eggers.
I didn't even know it was him. Is it like those other movies, or is it in addition? Is it more horror? I was assuming it was like a straight up kind of a horror movie, which I'm not into.
If it was meant to be scary, it didn't reach me that way.
So is it akin to Witch and Northman, two movies that I love?
I would say stylistically it is, and you shouldn't refrain from seeing it because of me, because I think I need to watch it again. It might have been I wasn't ready for it. I think if you like The Witch, you'll like this film. I like The Witch, so it's strange to say that I didn't particularly care for it. I think it was writing, performances that just didn't work for me. Okay. But try it out. I would love to hear your thoughts.
I can't guess what your number one is. I can't. I'm looking at all the other movies on my list and other movies I haven't seen. So what is it?
Baby Girl. Did you see that?
No.
So it's a Nicole Kidman film. She plays a CEO of a company that does some kind of high caliber sustainability work in so many ways. That's not important. An intern starts at her company, played by Harris Dickinson, and they engage in an S&M relationship. But what's interesting about it isn't that there's kink happening. It's not, oh my God, wow. Although the way that things are shot and the specificity of the way that things are shot, and especially that it's one of the biggest stars of all time, Nicole Kidman, doing the things that she's doing, it is kind of revolutionary, but it's not just about that. It is a coming-of-age story for someone who is into kink, someone who never allowed them or understood that they were subculture sexual, and they're slowly figuring it out with this other person. And I thought that was really cool to see in an American movie that's centered around a subject that people are completely uncomfortable talking about.
Well, so in line with my Scottsdale, Arizona brutalist odd sex scenes conversation earlier, this is a Dutch director. Mm-hmm. Helena Rijn, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but so in line with my stereotype of risky sexual scenes in movies being only done by people from Europe and definitely not by young dudes from Scottsdale or Arizona. This fits the stereotype. But yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to check out that movie. It's getting good reviews. So interesting.
It was a little strange. The two things that were strangest to me for awards, even though I don't really care about the Academy Awards anymore that much. I'm working towards embracing them again. But I thought she should have been nominated, And I thought that even though there were story things that didn't work for me exactly, Dune 2, the fact that Denis Villeneuve was not nominated for director, I just think he did things in making that movie that no one's ever done before.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe he's not nominated. That's very bizarre to me.
Yeah, I don't know what criteria people are following to nominate, but often I think one of the criteria is that you can sense the hand of the director, right? That without that specific hand, it wouldn't be what it is. And yeah.
I would say that definitely applies to Dune 2.
Yeah, all over the place. It is so Denis Villeneuve, and it's not a departure from the material. It is very true to the vibe and the feel of the books. I mean, not exactly, but very close. And his artistic abilities and know-how is all over the place. I mean, the movie spans so many different aspects of Dune. It's not just the sand. You have these caves, and you have the outfits, and you have the Sardaukar, and you have the Emperor and the Princess, and
you have the black and white, whatever dome or planet.
Yeah, the Harkonnen planets.
There we go.
Is apparently, because of the sun is a particular way. They don't have color outside, and so it's shot in this really cool way. And yeah, it is weird that he wouldn't be nominated, particularly because Dune Part 2 was nominated as a Best Picture possibility. But I'm looking at who was nominated. I'm looking at my list here.
Very cool that Sean Baker got a nomination for Anora, because I also think that, sometimes direction is thought of only as a visual thing, but it's also a highly emotional thing, and you have to make the right choices with your actors so that they don't lose the track.
Yeah.
And the fact that Nora's relationships were so complicated and yet so clear, that's stellar direction. And you can see that throughout all his films, like Red Rocket, and it's just...
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who would be bumped from this list of five. Sean Baker, Nora, the guy from Scottsdale for The Brutalist, James Mangold for A Complete Unknown. Yeah. I mean,
I would bump Jock. That's me.
Really? I haven't seen Emilia Perez. I've heard mixed reviews for sure.
It's bafflingly directed to me. I think, if anything, that's should be a Razzie, and that's so mean to say.
Did you like the movie, though, overall?
No, I didn't. I didn't like the direction. I really was excited about it because it's a trans story, but I just didn't. I didn't like the direction. That was the problem.
What did you like about it?
So it's centered around a character that I don't understand how I'm supposed to feel. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about a cartel hero, because to me, as a person that grew up in San Antonio, you have a lot of neighbors and friends who are directly affected by the terror of those people. And I didn't like any of the songs. It was, to me, the worst musical of the year, even worse than Joker 2, which is saying something. And I also, because I lived in San Antonio, I feel like I know Mexico really well, because there's such an influence there. It's right there. And they kind of treat Mexico as a sort of like if you're in Star Wars going to a new planet, and then all the main characters, with the exception of one or two, none of them are Mexican, and the Spanish isn't that great. I mean, because I have a little bit of a sense of Spanish, so it's just a lot of very bizarre choices.
Why was it nominated for Best Picture and Best Director?
I really don't know, and it's strange, because I would have wanted everything to be great, and I would have wanted this film to be viewed and be loved. I just didn't love it, and I think a lot of people in my world feel similarly to me, so I don't feel like I'm an outlier here. One of my best movie friends, Sean, is also trans, and also said, I had no idea what this person was trying to say about the trans experience, or Mexico, or cartels for that matter. And the music is just not fun.
The Rotten Tomatoes for the reviews, for the critics, is 72%. For the audience, it's 16%.
It's not fun.
Why would the critics love it and the people hate it?
I think because if you look at it on paper, and you don't actually watch it, it sounds like a movie that's very interesting, which is kind of, again, if we're going to talk about skepticism here, I'm skeptical that these people even watched the film.
Oh, really?
I don't know if, because, there's sort of a vacuum, it feels. It's no longer Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. It's this vacuum of reviews, and it's hard to know where these ratings really come from, to me, at least. If you really wanted to pick a movie for direction that is about the trans experience, they should have picked I Saw the TV Glow, which some story stuff and relationship stuff was confusing to me, and it wasn't my favorite film of the year. It's not even super high on my list, but like Dune 2, you cannot help but feel the director's hand. And that's the whole film is a metaphor for the trans experience. Or I should say a trans experience, one person's trans experience, which I think people need to remember. And that film, I think, got next to nothing. So there were plenty of options for these people. Plenty.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I don't know what that means.
On that note.
We've been recording for almost 3 hours. So on that note, let's adjourn here. Thanks for chatting with me, Collin. We could talk for another 3 hours about the other 35 movies that you didn't mention that are on your list.
Or anything.
Yeah.
You're just that awesome.
Yeah. And what would you like to plug, if anything?
Well, if you want to go to Instagram and look up the _tie, TIE _ POD, so the tie-in pod. That's a great place to begin if you're interested in entertainment and sustainability. And that's what I've been working on for almost a year and a half at this point, which is just getting guests together and getting people in the same room that care about the environment, but also want to make great movies. If you like movies and you liked this episode, there's plenty. We reviewed The Gaffer. Or we didn't review, excuse me. We interviewed the gaffer from No Time to Die. We've interviewed the director and producer of Radium Girls. A ton of people in the industry who have crew stories. And also, I'm less a music guy, but still a super important expression of art. There's people that have been, like Dragon Wings, the big solar panels that power like Burning Man and all these music festivals, Coachella, they come on the pod. So if that sounds like your thing, if you were concerned about the LA fires and you don't want a world where that kind of stuff happens, then please go to that Instagram, and then through there you can find all our episodes either on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify.
So give us the name again.
The Tie-In Podcast.
The Tie-In Podcast.
Yes.
So as in tying a knot. And
absolutely,
and in as in the door. The tie-in podcast. All right, well,
we are all connected.
That's the end of that call in with Call In, and everyone out there, please take care of yourself. Why should people take care of themselves, Collin?
Because you deserve it.